Continuing to grow economic development within our community, try to keep economic development within the cities and villages so that we don't increase urban sprawl and protect our agricultural land.
Thank you, Rodney.
The first one comes to my mind would be the building of another jail or a new jail. The second would be the same as what Becky said with the sales tax. And the third would be, I again think safety is important, so it would have to be the war call and the 8,500 going to one system.
Okay, thank you. Next question, is there a plan B if the sales tax does not pass? Rodney?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay, Becky?
I agree. I do not know what Plan B would be since I'm not inside the county as an employee. Not sure what that would be, but I'm sure the commissioners would accept the challenge and figure out a way that we could do it in the future.
And Rodney, could you move your microphone closer to you? Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead with the next question. Several years ago, there was an article in our local newspaper, the Daily Record, about concealed carry gun laws. The top law enforcement official in the county, Sheriff Hutchinson, stated he wished everyone carried a concealed weapon. What do both commissioner candidates think of such an opinion? Becky?
I am in favor of the Second Amendment. I have a concealed carry myself, as well as most people in my family do. I come from a law enforcement family. My husband is the police chief of Mount Eaton, and my son works for the Wayne County Sheriff's Office as a corrections officer. I believe everybody has the right to protect themselves, but I also believe not everybody is qualified to carry a gun, and if you do want one, you should go through the proper steps and the training that's required for it.
Thank you, Rodney.
I think it's an individual's choice whether they have a concealed carry permit. I don't think everybody would be required to carry one. I do believe in protection, whatever that may be. And I think we just need to be safe. I'm against it. Number one, I don't think it fits our society as it is today compared to the way it was 20 years ago.
Becky?
I don't think right now, with the type of charges, felonies, drug charges and things, that a pay-for-stay has as many clients that would be able to go there. I know it was very successful when we had it before. I also know that the county had a tough time collecting the money from the people that went to the pay-to-stay, and it was closed for budget reasons and reduction in the type of sentences for people that could go there. I am a big supporter of the jail, and I believe that we need to look at other ways to incarcerate as well as train and educate people and help them through the opiate crisis. And so the pay-for-stay would be for minimal misdemeanors, and I don't think that's where our courts are at this point, and there's a lot more felonies, and so I'm not sure the pay-for-stay would be the right thing at this time.
Okay, good. Sort of a follow.
The sales increase, the 3/10 that the commissioners have put on the ballot, is for just to build and operate the new jail. It is all of Wayne County, and the sales tax will be for all of the county. Currently, we pay 6.25 sales tax throughout the county, and many people think that that money comes to Wayne County. Well, 5.75 of that tax goes to the state. We do get some of that money back through grants and other issues, but we only get 0.75 of that tax right now come back to Wayne County, and it goes, I believe it goes to the general fund. So the 0.3 sales tax increase will be dedicated to only the jail construction and operation of the jail. It will not go into the general fund.
Thank you. Rodney?
I think our current sales tax is 6.5%. I think also that not only is it for all Wayne County, it comes in anybody visiting Wayne County and making a purchase that would be collected as well. So it's a benefit to this versus property tax increase.
Okay, thank you. Next question. You each mentioned the top 3 issues in our county earlier. What plan do you have to impact your top issues? Rodney?
Would you repeat that question?
Sure. You each mentioned the top 3 issues in our county earlier. What plan do you have to impact your top issues?
Well, I definitely would like to participate in what is going on. Generally, that's how things get done, and it creates. You have to create teamwork to get those accomplishments. You need, if for example, the jail. There's no question that we need to do improvement there and replace the jail. It's outdated. It's overcrowded. It needs to be replaced. We need to get out there with the community and make sure they understand what's at stake at this point in time. I know we had a lot of informational meetings throughout the community, but we'll need to continue to do that, to continue that support.
Okay, Becky?
I believe that the jail is a very, very necessary thing, and I'm very interested in working on that project. I believe with my construction background and my education in my years as private sector in construction and maintenance, I will be a valuable asset to offer my services as part of the project as it goes on, as one of the biggest construction projects perhaps the county has ever had. And therefore, I will speak for the sales tax because I think this is a necessary condition. We have safety of our officers in there as well as the prisoners. The other issue is I think we could get to the point with WorkHog and 8500 that the city of Worcester and Orrville will be willing to work with Wayne County for the dispatch services. Ashland has another couple years before they could leave WorkHog, so that gives us an opportunity that we could work together as a community and try to come up with something that works for all parties at an economical means for all parties.
Thank you.
That it will allow people that have large amounts of drugs to, a judge will not be able to sentence anybody until it's your 3rd time offense within 24 months. And I think that it will just put more drugs out on the street, and it ties the judge's hands. And people need to have some consequences for their actions. And if we slap their hands and make it a misdemeanor, I don't think it's going to improve anything in our county except more drugs, more crime, and more violence.
Okay, thank you. Rodney, anything further?
Well, again, with issue 1, I agree. I'm not supportive of issue 1 as well. Just by experience and research, there has to be some sort of penalty to drive someone to make an improvement. Otherwise, they're not going to take that issue themselves.
Okay, thank you. And this is what could you do to protect our groundwater? Okay, so what, if anything, can you do if elected about the effects of the, quote, waste lagoon in Canaan Township? And what could you do to protect our groundwater? Rodney?
Well, I don't know with what was already indicated by the EPA that I would do anything any different. the decision's made. I might think that a synthetic liner would be more beneficial, and along with a cover for that in order to control the odors, but the decision has already been made.
Thank you. Becky?
Well, unfortunately, as a county commissioner, we can't really do anything about the lagoon except protect the roadways in and out of the lagoon and make sure that the roadways, the county engineer has the rights to protect the roadways and make sure they're maintained. As far as the lagoon, again, it was the EPA's decision on approving or not approving the permit. It is very unfortunate for the residents that live there that this is happening there, but it is within the guidelines of the Ohio EPA and will be monitored. There are monitor wells being placed around it for leakage. I don't think anybody really knows one way or the other what the outcome's going to be. It is, the other thing is that what goes into the lagoon will be monitored and hopefully everything will go. If it does not go by the EPA permit and there are violations, they would be able to shut it down. Another thing that I think it's important is if the people that have the lagoon would work with the local farmers and recommend drag lining so that they could use drag lining to spread the liquids on the fields, and then there would be less odor and less trucks to jeopardize our roads.
Thank you. What should Ohio do to create employment opportunities that inspire young people to remain in Ohio?
Did you say what did they do, or?
What should Ohio do to create employment opportunities that inspire young people to remain in Ohio?
New York has a program for college education that helps middle-class children, kids go to college. It's called their Excelsior program. And what it does is it will let their college be free as long as they give 3 years to the state afterwards. So it doesn't matter that they don't have to work for the state, but if they get a job, that job is in the state. But the plus side to that is their tuition is free. So one of the things I would love to see implemented in Ohio is a version of that, where we can, give our children the possibility of a good education without crippling them with debt.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth?
Fine. I think the state should relax somewhat on licensing. Say, if you graduate as a doctor, paying the licensing is kind of redundant as long as you have met those requirements. I think by relaxing on licensing fees and also making ways for tax breaks for small businesses as well as the larger ones, larger corporations, would make it easier for young people to want to pursue those routes to opening a business and staying in Ohio.
Thank you, Scott.
Cindy, could you read the question one more time? Just so
Sure. What should Ohio do to create employment opportunities that inspire young people to remain in Ohio?
Well, currently, right now, if you're talking about education, higher education, I think Ohio is a little bit higher than a lot of states that I've seen for the cost of education. So that's one thing that we've been working on in the State House, passing bills to try to contain those costs and try to force our educational systems to expand and be a little bit more well-developed in the sense of cost controls and offering those types of programs that people are looking for higher-end jobs. The other thing is that we do need to reduce, licensing is one thing, and I do agree with Ms. Thomas on that. Licensing is something that we can look at. But overall, I think that making sure that we reduce barriers to opportunities, to investment in Ohio, which there are some. I think Ohio is on a good path. It's just making sure that we're keeping students here as soon as they graduate, that we have those tech jobs, and that we have the underlying infrastructure, at least in our cities and suburbs, to make sure that we have that type of facility to create jobs and spur on more technology.
Thank you. Okay, let me ask you all to move your microphones even closer. Okay, thank you. Next question. Yesterday, the UN issued a report warning of dire consequences if carbon emissions are not reduced. As Ohio is a large coal producer and burner, what steps should Ohio legislature take to address this issue? Elizabeth?
I think, as we were speaking earlier, that more lies in the scope of the EPA rather than necessarily in the scope of legislature. With that being said, I think we do need to be mindful that we are protecting our resources for the future while also opening ways for businesses to innovate, to have the power to come up with solutions on their own rather than being forced to do business one way or another.
Thank you. Scott?
Are you talking about the IPCC? Is that what you said? What was the organization that just came out with this report?
The UN, United Nations.
Yeah, okay, that's the IPCC. So basically, the IPCC came out with a report, and this is the actual fourth time that they've stated that there's going to be a crisis in a number of years. The first 3 times they were not correct in their outcomes. What I would say is that inexpensive energy is important. It's important in Ohio, it's important for our economy, it's important for our jobs. And so although I think that the United States of America has done a very good job on lowering emissions and things that matter for our future, of course no one is here wanting pollution. But this is probably a bigger debate about climate change, global warming, and man-made, whether or not CO2 and what factors that comes in. But I guess my point is that there are a lot, more than 80% of the fuel and energy used right now in Ohio is fossil fuels. And it's something that's very important for manufacturing jobs, for people, and for low-income individuals who are heating their homes with gas, natural gas. So,
thank you. Kevin?
I believe it's time that we actually listen to scientists. I think it's time that when they tell us that there's going to be dire need.
Go ahead.
When there's going to be dire need for change, that we really should heed that call. Green energy is the way we should go. We have resources. We have windmill farms out on the west side of Ohio. There's solar energy. If we want to progress, we need to put our money and our focus into green energy. We have to move away. We have to start moving away from, yes, this cheap energy. But we can't do it forever. We have to start making that change. And we need somebody in Columbus that will stand up and do that. We'll stand up for green energy, and we'll try to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
yeah, I'll just respond to that. Right now, there is quite a dialogue between scientists on climate change. Of course, as you know, the politicians switched it from global warming to climate change because people weren't comfortable with global warming. There's a lot of disconnect between what politics is pushing and what scientists are talking about right now. Of course, I believe in climate change, and I believe that humans may have something to do with that, but there's no clear-cut answer to how you address that or even what we're doing. We know that for the past 1,000 years, that we have been on a warming trend, except for the little ice age that happened in the 1600s. I mean, it's been warmer than it is right now in the Roman warming period, and that was before the Industrial Revolution. CO2, 3% of all CO2 emissions, or all CO2 that's counted right now, is man-made, and much less of that is even oil and gas. So I think that before we go down the path of Germany, where our elderly are freezing during the winter and dying, just Google it, Germany went away from this and went back to going and trying to get natural gas. It's clean, it's efficient, and it's good for a population.
Thank you. Facing Ohio, what is your plan to impact the issues, and what have you already done? Elizabeth?
I think it's pretty obvious tonight that one of the top issues facing Ohio right now is the opioid crisis. If you look at data, it goes to show that the more we overregulate prescription pain meds, the more it pushes activity to the black market. I think we need to take a hard look at some of our legislation that's putting undue regulations on the doctors and their prescribing methods. They're unable to treat each patient on a case-by-case basis for fear of being criminally charged. And as people don't get the adequate amount of pain meds that they need, they turn to the black market, which is really not safe either. Overdose deaths have risen as legislation has been pushed up and up and up. What I plan to do, I think we need to look at totally decriminalizing marijuana. If you look at Colorado, there's been a large decrease in opioid deaths.
Thank you. Scott?
I'll start with the opioid crisis. I think there's a couple of things that we need to do. Of course, the death toll has risen in the last report for 2017. However, if you go and you talk and you look at several different studies, it shows that that some of the things with the opioid crisis are waning, such as there are some regulations that I do agree with on the prescription of opioids. At one point in time, you had individuals who were on a pain medication, and they were continually given these, and they got addicted. I mean, that's a real serious issue that we need to look at and manage through. But also, we need to go after those who are selling that are cutting opiates and putting it in heroin, cutting carfentanil, putting it in heroin. Now they're doing it in marijuana and other things. And I think that we need to go after those folks. I think the economy, having jobs available for people to have a hope and a path forward, that they can have a skill set through our educational system, is very important also to keep people from going into that realm. But those are the two top things besides education, and I'll talk about that later.
Thank you. Kevin?
That's a tall order, 3 things, how are you going to solve them in a minute. So we've touched on the opioid. I'm going to lump that in with healthcare. I think that is something that is part of our healthcare and needs to be addressed through that. The environment is a second thing. I think that the environment, especially in Wayne County here, we're quietly becoming one of the front line of the environmental clean air, clean water issue. And then public education. What have I done on those things? Well, as private citizens, it's a little tough. But for the environment, I've joined the Sierra Club. I have their endorsement. I've helped the people with the Canaan sewer sludge pond. I helped them organize a demonstration downtown. So I was active in that. And then as far as the healthcare,
Thank you.
Carfentanil to kill 10,000 people and be a minor misdemeanor. I mean, I think that issue 1 may very much empty our prisons and fill our morgues. And I think that it's something that we need to have more flexibility within our judicial system to deal with some of these issues. And I don't think that the idea is just simply changing the levels and the amounts of drugs that people have to that degree and just throwing it down into a lesser, basically like a ticket. I mean, I just don't think that that's the direction that we should be going. And I think it'd be devastating for the state of Ohio.
Thank you, Kevin.
What do we know about issue 1 other than what we've seen on the commercials? The commercial tells us, and Scott just gave you the party line, that somebody with 20 grams of fentanyl could kill 10,000 people and wouldn't go to jail. But that's untrue. That's a scare tactic. Somebody that has that wouldn't be charged with possession. They would be charged with trafficking. They would go to jail for trafficking. This issue has nothing to do with that. What issue 1 is made to help people that are part of this opioid crisis. It was a way for them, that if they had a little bit and they went to jail, that it wasn't just a felony, it was a misdemeanor, so that when they came out, they could find a job. The other commercial that we've seen a lot of is that you can work off 20 or 25% of your prison sentence. Well, 40 out of 50 states already have something like that. Ohio is behind on that.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Well, I do agree that we do need to change some of the sentencing for low-level offenders with simple possession and try to divert them out of prison and towards rehab. I don't think that a constitutional amendment is appropriate for passing laws. This is under the scope of legislature rather than under the scope of a constitutional amendment.
Yes, Scott, go ahead.
Who do you want to go first?
Why don't we start with Christina?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So in terms of my first orders of business, that would be my priorities for the state of Ohio. And I guess I have three that I'd like to discuss. One would be the economy, two would be education, and three would be the opioid crisis. With respect to the economy, I believe that the government does not create jobs, but it's the private sector that does, so the government needs to create an environment inviting to business. That involves lowering our taxes, common sense regulatory reform, and an educated workforce. That leads to the second one, which is education. I do believe that every child in Ohio should have access to a quality education. I've done a lot in this area, including leading on House Bill 2. That was a bill that I sponsored in the last General Assembly to reform charter schools. And then third, the opioid crisis. Of course, that's killing over 4,700 people in the last year. And that is certainly something that we have been addressing as a General Assembly, but need to continue to do that. And it's not just a government that's going to solve that. I believe that's all neighbors, friends, families, churches, everyone working together, and we can do it.
Thank you. Adam?
Well, first of all, I do agree that we need to address the opiate crisis. The crisis has been spiraling out of control. When I left the Summit County Prosecutor's Office in 2007, heroin was a term we used in our history books. When I came into private practice in February 2010, it was everywhere. We were slow to react, but we finally have started to speed up things. We need to continue on with Governor Kasic's Medicaid expansion, which has helped thousands of opiate addicts throughout the state get the treatment, get the help, and the assistance that they need. I do agree we need to continue on and push Ohio's economy forward. I think we need to start investing in green tech type of areas, in biotech, in areas that are going to be the job growth creators in the future. We need to, along those lines, then dovetail into educational reform. When the original DeRolf decision came out, it came out the week after I graduated from high school. Some of my classmates have grandkids, and we still haven't fixed the issues with education funding in the state of Ohio. It's time that we sit down and have an educated, honest conversation about how to fix our school systems from preschool all the way through tech school or college and make sure all of our kids have an opportunity for quality education.
Thank you. Okay, since this was an important issue with the representatives, we're going to ask you this question as well. Yesterday, the UN issued a report warning of dire consequences if carbon emissions are not reduced. As Ohio is a large coal producer and burner, what steps should Ohio's legislatures take to address this issue? Adam?
Well, first of all, I also defer to the scientists when it comes to this kind of information. I started out college as an environmental studies major when the idea of climate change was just starting to come up. I think that we can become one of the world's leaders when it comes to green tech and high energy positions. And I think it'll benefit not just our environment, but also our economy. For example, we're talking about the windmill farms out in Paulding and Van Wert counties. My great aunt actually has 2 windmills on her farm. She's 89 years old in a nursing home. She gets $15,000 per windmill that helps pay for her nursing home bills so she doesn't have to sell the farmland. My cousin's a school superintendent out there. He doesn't have to go for a tax levy for decades because of the revenue that's being generated. We need to stop looking at it as an and/or issue when it comes to environmental and green tech jobs. We can have both. We can grow our economy, clean up our economy, and work together and bring together the technological areas and as well as the environmental concerns. And I think we can do it and push Ohio forward and become a world leader.
Thank you. Christina?
With the issue of energy. My perspective is we need diversity, just like in a financial portfolio. There is value in the base load for coal, for nuclear, for wind and solar. But second of all, I'd like to point out that everyone in this room, if you are passionate about green energy, you can get right now on ohiochoice.gov. It's called Apples to Apples. Just Google Apples to Apples, and you can select from there. If you want 100% renewable energy, you can do that today. So I think we do need to balance. But if you do that, by the way, I did look just the other day, and for regular fuel, it's just 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and for if you want 100% renewable, it's 5 1/4. So it's a little bit more expensive, but you can do it. Finally, I do have a farm. I live on a farm. I've got a solar power on my fence. But that was my choice. The government didn't make me do it.
Thank you.
Can I just do a follow-up real quick?
Sure.
As the technology improves and as we learn how to adapt that technology, we're going to continue to be able to push the prices down. But if Ohio's the leader when it comes to these kind of technologies, we're not too far from Timken and Canton, where they make the bearings that are being used in the windmills. We have a tremendous opportunity, especially if we can educate our young people, how to be the electrical workers who can work there, how to work the welding jobs, how to work the construction jobs associated with it. And what I'm trying to say is that as we continue to build up these technologies, we're going to bring the cost down and make it more and more efficient. And the other thing we do need to do in Ohio is we need to protect our nuclear power plants. We have 2 nuclear power plants in the state. They're a lot cleaner than some of the coal-burning ones, some of the natural gas-burning ones even. And we need to make sure that, and they're also high-tech paying jobs. And so we need to work with our energy companies to try and make sure that not only are we getting green energy and clean energy, but that we're also helping to protect jobs, whether they're in Davis-Besse in Port Clinton or whether they're down along the Ohio River.
I'd like to follow.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. So when we look at energy as a country, I think we should look at it as a whole. And I mean, the sun really shines in the south, and the wind really blows in the plains. So solar panels are great in the southwest. The windmills are fantastic out in the plains. We are blessed in the state of Ohio to be sitting in a Utica and Marcellus shale deposit. So we have abundant clean gas. And so I think as a nation, we should be looking at what assets we have and where we have them, and not try to put 2 square pegs into round holes. But I actually do agree with the comment on the nuclear power plants. I mean, they are 0 emissions. They do provide excellent jobs, and I think that certainly they're a fantastic workhorse when it comes to base load, because it's very important to have reliable energy and low-cost energy for our businesses and manufacturing that use a lot of this.
Thank you.
I'm for the Second Amendment. I have my carry concealed weapon license. It's actually issued by the Wayne County Sheriff. I still have the same shotgun my grandfather gave me when I was 15. My major issue with the Second Amendment is I want to keep guns out of the hands of people that should have it, the mentally ill, convicted felons. And we need to make sure that we have the tools in place to do so. As far as specific types of weapons and that, if you want an AR-15 that has a big clip, I always learn that you make the first shot count, that you don't need the next 29, but I don't necessarily see an issue with it. I just want to make sure that people are using weapons and firearms responsibly. And I bet that if I did a survey around this room, that almost everybody in this room would use an arm responsibly. I'm worried about the people who shouldn't have firearms.
Christina?
Thank you. So I also fully support the Second Amendment. I believe in law-abiding citizens' right to keep and bear arms to protect themselves and their families. I also have my concealed carry. And in terms of Buckeye Firearms, I have been endorsed by them. I have an A+ rating with them. And I believe I might be the only candidate for the Senate that has that A+. I also have an A rating with the NRA. And I would like to throw in a shout out for your representative, Scott Wiggum here, who's, by the way, doing a fantastic job representing Wayne County. But he sponsored, I think it was House Bill 142, and that also was a great Second Amendment bill that would pass through my committee. So thank you.